All right. You know, this issue in Mali has been on, and it seems there's just a difficult position right now because Malians, the citizens, are happy that, okay, the military is doing what we want.
But, you know,
On the other hand,
the happiness could be short-lived because we've seen how this kind of processes go when there is a coup. The people are happy at first, but then in the long run, is that what they really need at this time? So the happiness may be short-lived, you know, according to some analysts. So it's a bit dicey. You know, in the first place, this shouldn't have happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have Dr. Uche Igwe joining us now from the United Kingdom. He's Global Affairs Analyst and Fellow of Firoz Laji Center for Africa, London School of Economics. It's nice to have you join us right now. Dr. Igwe, it's good to see you after a long while.
Now, yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Now, looking at what is going on in Mali, it seemed to be a little complex between Malians expressing gladness and happiness for getting rid of an administration they have been on the streets against for so many weeks or maybe even getting to months. And then on the other hand, where African leaders are saying this is not, in fact, not just African leaders, world leaders are saying this is not the right process. How do we balance this?
Yes, it's a difficult one. And I think that the whole situation in Mali, especially the alleged you know, issues of corruption that has triggered the street protests is something that sort of makes the citizens delighted at what happened. But again, it is important to say and then join African and world leaders to ask for the restoration of constitutional order, even though the situation in Mali is such that the citizens are protesting. I do not think that a coup d'etat is the solution. So I join concerned African leaders and world leaders to ask the junta to return back to the barracks and for Malians to seek the restoration of a constitutional order. This is difficult, I must say, because the president just won a second term in 2018. And what it means is that Malians need to wait for the next election, as it were. So it is a difficult thing, especially if you recall that violence is continuing, small arms and light weapons flowing from the disturbances in Libya and all of that. So the citizens, in a way, they are right to ask for stability, to ask for free and fair elections. But it's a complicated situation because the only way, the acceptable way that this can happen is not by coup d'etat, but by elections. So it's a difficult one to recommend at the moment. I think that it is to ask the citizens to remain calm and seek the next election cycle to express whatever is their feeling at the moment, rather than welcome a military junta. Even though the military junta has announced transition, you know, to general elections, but you know, this is something in Africa we have seen from time to time. Nobody knows how far this can go. So I think the right thing to do is to encourage them to return back to the barracks and seek dialogue with citizens to evolve an acceptable constitutional order.
But, you know, we've seen what plays out when the military, you know, considers dialogue and the government has been reinstated. What could be the end game should the military continue with the program?
I don't think that the military government is anachronistic. So I would ask African leaders. I hear the former president of Nigeria, President Jonathan, is playing a role. And I think that this is a time the African Union need to move in to constitute an appropriate and an acceptable group that will dialogue with both the military and the former president, and indeed the citizens, to evolve an acceptable constitutional order that is democratic.
All right, ECOWAS announced that they have their standby forces standing by. I wonder if that is a pointer to the fact that they would like to take a step, even if it means invading, or, okay, maybe I shouldn't use the word invading, but if they have to use the military dimension, would that be advisable by any means?
I think the military dimension should be a last resort, especially if you recall that Mali has witnessed, their own portion of violence, especially, like I said, since the disturbances in Libya. So I think that dialogue will be the first thing that both ECOWAS, African Union, and well-meaning African leaders should explore at the moment. Violence should be a last resort, especially if we begin to recall that, this violence, might escalate. And at the end of the day, citizens will be the one to be the casualties of such violence, especially as they have been in the past.
All right.
So my view is that violence should be a last resort. Dialogue should be the right approach, and restoration of the constitutional order should be the urgent endpoint.
Okay.
Okay, so we had the meeting yesterday, virtual meeting yesterday, and there were sanctions being given on Mali. Economic sanctions are one thing, but that even has a limit. Do you see that, does the ECOWAS protocol allow it to take military action against member states in this set of circumstances?
Yes, I think it does, but I insist that that should be a last resort. Consultation and dialogue should be explored first before any form of military action will be contemplated. This is because of the peculiar situation in Mali. We're all aware of the sparks of violence since the disturbances in Libya over the years. So I think that contemplating military action could actually lead to the escalation of issues rather than maintain the fragile peace that is in the country at the moment. So for me, military intervention from the ECOWAS sub-region and sub-regional troops should be a last resort.
All right, Dr. Igwe, the ECOWAS heads of state are requesting for a restoration of civilian order. And when it comes to restoring that, the military, the coup leaders have announced that there's going to be a restoration of the order, and there could be a transitional government which might be headed by civilian or military on one hand. But shouldn't that be what the ECOWAS leaders are asking? Or are they asking for, is it clear if what they're asking for is to restore Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta back to a government?
Well, I think that is what the ECOWAS sub-region is, and the other bodies, the African Union. I just read the tweet from the chair of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa. But the thing is that whether this is practical at the moment, remains the subject of debate. I think what is practical is a dialogue with the military junta, a dialogue with the president, and also a dialogue with the opposition. If you can cast your mind back, there has been, opposition-backed protests even before the coup. Rather than, insist on the immediate restoration of the president or former president, depending on who is speaking.
Yeah, but the dialogue hasn't been working all the while, because that is what former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan has been doing over the past months, and that failed and led to what's happened right now.
Well, I think when dialogue is working, you re-strategize and continue dialogue. Any other thing can escalate the fragile peace in the region. So I think that, there may be a different strategy to the dialogue. Maybe it will become more high level instead of ECOWAS alone involving the African Union, and if possible, the United Nations Security Council. But then, that is the only way to go. Dialogue, mediation, consultation would be the way to go. Military intervention, external military intervention, in my view, would only be a last resort. I suspect from the feedback we get from the military junta, there's some willingness to, launch a transition program to allow, elections to take place and all of that. I think that's an entry point for some conversation with the junta. How long or how short the transition will be and who constitutes the leadership of the country during the transition should be the subject of the conversation, rather than thinking about external military intervention for now.
Of course, we'll wait to see how France will be responding to this military coup, even though we've not really heard so much from them. Global Affairs Analyst Uche Igwe, thank you so much for your thoughts on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you.